Hey, what's up you guys? Today I'm going to talk to you about my 10 favourite books that I have read in 2020. I read so many good books this year, so this list was a little bit hard to narrow down. I decided that I wasn't going to include any books that were rereads, for example, The Hunger Games or Twilight. I decided not to put them on this list and just keep it focused on books I read for the first time in 2020. But hopefully you find some great recommendations from this list. Obviously, since they made it onto this list, all these books are great in my opinion. So let's just get started with book number 10. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and please subscribe. It really helps on my channel, and hopefully, like I said, you find some new recommendations. In 10th place, I have The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. In this sci-fi book, a man is caught abusing drugs to stop him from dreaming, so he's sent to a sleep therapist because when he dreams, he changes reality. Nobody else realises this though apart from him, because he can remember the previous reality and the new reality, whereas everyone else can only remember the new reality and their memories as if they've always lived in this reality. The sleep therapist realises this man is not crazy and is actually telling the truth, so he starts to hypnotise the man because he realises that if he's in the room with the man, when reality changes, he will also remember the previous reality. So he uses hypnosis to change the man's dreams into what the therapist thinks will make the perfect world. And this book explores so many interesting questions such as racism and race and illness and war, and what will happen to the world when someone tries to play God and tries to eradicate these things, because it's not as simple as it may seem. When, for example, the man tries to eradicate race, it causes more issues. When he tries to eradicate war, it changes the world in a completely different way. Like, it's just crazy. All the things that happen in this book are so interesting and so crazy. And what I really liked as well was that Ursula K. Le Guin did not spell things out to you straight away. You kind of had to work things out for yourself at first, and obviously as the story progresses, the changes in the reality get more and more crazy and more intense. But at first there's very subtle little things and you have to kind of pick up on them yourself. And I just thought this was such an amazing book. It really blended all these fun sci-fi elements with also some really serious topics, for example race and war and playing God, and just put them all together perfectly. And I think this is such a great book for even people that aren't like super into sci-fi, because it doesn't go into like huge scientific detail with things. It's just a really, really interesting book about morality. In 9th place, I have The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich, and in this story we follow a young Native American boy whose mother is raped on the edge of their reservation, and because she cannot tell exactly where the assault took place, the police can't really do anything about it because there's all these convoluted laws about tribal police and state police and their power and all that kind of stuff. And it's such a powerful book. It's obviously about a very traumatic situation, and telling it from the perspective of the son was a really interesting choice, I thought. And Louise Erdrich's writing is just beautiful. I absolutely fell in love with all the characters, the way that she writes and describes the settings, she describes the reservation and just the summer and just everything about it. I loved like the descriptions. It was so atmospheric and made you feel like you were there. And obviously with it being a very hard-hitting story, this meant that you were really there feeling the emotions of all of these characters in this traumatic situation. And I just loved like how she blended it all together, this story of this young boy growing up, but then also with his mother having this horrible thing happen to her, and just everything together was just so perfectly executed that I just absolutely loved it. Her writing, like I've already said, was just so atmospheric. It really made you feel like you were there, and the topic was just so hard-hitting that it is definitely like a book that is going to stick with me, and I highly recommend it to anyone that will not be triggered by it, because obviously it is a heavy topic. In 8th place, I have Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton, and this is a coming-of-age story set in Australia about two young teenage boys who are pulled into the world of crime and drug dealing because of their parents, who are drug addicts and then drug dealers, and it is very complex. There is so much more to the story than this. It really dives into like the world of crime in like such a crazy way, but then also it has like all these different subplots. But I really think that it's best to go into this blind, because that is what I done. I only know this basic premise that I've already told you, and I was so surprised by the rest of it, but I just absolutely loved it. I thought the writing, just like Louise Erdrich, was so atmospheric and captivating. The imagery was just beautiful, and like the style of writing as well. Everything about it just really dragged me into the story and like made me so invested. The characters were super compelling and likable. I was really rooting for them all. Even, the parents who made these kind of bad decisions going into crime, like you really understood why they kind of were forced to do it, and I just absolutely loved it. I could not put this book down for the ending. The last 80 pages, I was reading it so fast because I needed to find out what happened. I just thought it was one of the best endings that I've read. It's maybe the best ending out of all the books on this list. It was so captivating and compelling, and I cannot recommend this book enough. I really just think it was so beautifully written as well. Like I've already said, it was so atmospheric and made you feel like you were there in Australia with these young boys growing up, and I absolutely loved it. Number 7, we have The Word for World is Forest by Ursula K. Le Guin, and this is a sci-fi book that also deals with anti-colonialism and the military. So in this book, humans go to a planet to use it for logging because they have used all the natural resources on Earth. There's no trees left, and there they turn the planet's native species into their slaves because they find out that no matter what they do to this species, they never fight back. They're very docile, and it's just in their nature to never fight back against anyone and kind of just let things happen to them. However, eventually one of them does snap and leads a revolution against the humans. So what I loved about this was the themes of anti-colonialism and the military, obviously, but also the themes of the environment. They really stuck out to me. They were so impactful, just the way that Ursula K. Le Guin kind of described nature and really made you understand how integral nature and the environment is with every species. Every living species depends on the environment, and we're all interconnected. You know, every single species and the environment, we all play our part, humans as well. Even though humans do seem to do more bad than good, every species has a role to play in the environment, and I just thought it was so beautifully written. There was one passage, it was the start of chapter 2, and I read it like 4 times through. It was just a description of the forest on this planet, and it was so beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I've ever read, to be honest, and I just absolutely loved it. Obviously as well, the anti-colonialism themes and the military themes were so strong and so impactful, and just really highlighted the awful way that humans treat people that they believe are inferior to them. And this book just really stuck with me, and I really recommend it to absolutely everyone, just for the writing, but then also the themes. It was just perfectly crafted. In 6th place, I have Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, and I feel like this does not need an introduction. It is about a billionaire who builds a theme park where he has brought dinosaurs back to life using their DNA, and a group of people, including his grandchildren, are there before the park officially opens to tour it and investigate, and obviously things go wrong and the dinosaurs get loose. So I absolutely love the Jurassic Park movies. They've always been a big favourite of mine ever since I saw them, like Jurassic World as well. I just love all the movies, and I did not expect to love this book so much because I just thought it was going to be quite similar to the movie, and I already knew exactly what was going to happen. However, what really surprised me was just how adult this book really was. The movie is much more of like a family adventure that obviously it has scary parts as well, which I don't even need to talk about. You know, the raptors in the kitchen is like iconic, the T-Rex, but the book turns this up to 11. The book is definitely like an adult horror sci-fi book. It is so gruesome, so gory at parts. It really takes things to extreme. There's so much more death and violence, and it really highlights way more than the movies did. The movie obviously shows you like Jurassic Park is not a good idea, but then people were like, it probably might still work. No, in this book, you were like, do not ever bring dinosaurs back to life. Like, you can really tell how terrible it would be. And what I also thought was really cool about this book was that it had some multimedia type things. There was like different signs involved, and it just kind of broke up the story a little bit. They weren't like an integral part of the story, but it was just like little things on the page that made it a bit more interesting. So I really enjoyed that as well. So if you're a fan of the Jurassic Park movies, this book is like a must read because it really like just takes the movie and like turns it up to 11, like I already said. It was really fun, and I highly recommend it. In 5th place, I have White Oleander by Janet Fitch, and in this book we follow Astrid, whose mother is a poet and then also a sociopath. Her mother kills a man, and Astrid is put into the foster care system. She then goes through so many traumatic situations in all these different foster homes, and every single time you're just begging, like, please let this one be the right home for her. They never are. Everything always goes wrong, and it is so heartbreaking to read. But the book is written so beautifully. Astrid is also an artist just like her mother, so you can really tell this through the way the book is written. Everything is so poetic and beautiful and atmospheric, and you really just felt like you were there with Astrid in these horrible situations, which is not always the nicest feeling to feel, but it really just sucks you straight into the book, and I absolutely loved it. What I also really loved was just Astrid herself. She was such a nice, captivating, beautiful character, and you really understand like everything she feels. You really just take it in yourself and feel like you're there with her and just want the best for her, to be honest. You obviously also have the themes of her coming to terms with what her mother did and the way that her mother raised her and didn't treat her properly, because her mother is definitely like a sociopath who does not care about anyone other than herself. And Astrid is kind of coming to terms with this and seeing if she can maybe forgive her mother. So there's all these themes about like forgiveness and will she forgive her mother? And does her mother actually deserve her forgiveness? And all this stuff like that. Because basically because of what her mother did by putting Astrid into the foster care system, she's experienced all these horrible traumatic things that I will not go into. This book does need like trigger warnings, but definitely like if you're sensitive to, you know, sexual assault or physical abuse and things like that, domestic abuse, like this is maybe a book to skip. But I just think it is so beautiful and so impactful, and I really, obviously, since it's on this list, like every other book, just recommend it to everyone, to be honest. It is so beautifully written and I just loved it. In fourth place, I have City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, and this is book 3 in the Mortal Instruments series, so obviously I'm not going to really go into the plot of this. However, the reason this book is on this list is because it is the most fun I've had reading a book, definitely this year and maybe ever. Every single page I felt like I was being shocked and surprised. There were so many plot twists. All of the plot threads that had been building up throughout the series were tied up so perfectly, and just everything came together so well in such a shocking way. I swear, like, I had to put the book down so many times to text my friends, like in all caps, because I was so like stunned, angry, excited, sad, shocked, like every single possible emotion I felt about reading this book. And it was just such a fun book to read, and the series as a whole was just so fun, and I'm absolutely like so glad that I decided to give the Mortal Instruments a chance. I really wish everyone would give them a chance because they're just like so fun, and I just love like all these twisted little plot twists. That's a weird phrase, but you know what I mean, like. And just everything about this series was just so exciting and such a fun, wild ride to read. Even if you think you know like the plot twists and stuff, reading them yourself, it's just like on another level. Like I just had so much fun reading this series, and I am absolutely just so glad that I gave it a chance. In third place, I have Life and Death, Twilight Reimagined by Stephanie Meyer, and I know you're thinking like, you said you weren't going to put Twilight on this list. I did not. This is a different book. Okay, so this is Twilight, but the genders of all the characters are switched. So Bella is now Bo, and Edward is now Edith, and just every character is switched, and it basically is the same story. However, just this gender switch thing, it just appealed to me so much. Obviously, as a male reader, I just thought it was so fun, and I absolutely loved being in Bella's shoes, but in a male perspective, and just really feeling like I was there in this story. It was just such a fun, interesting twist that it seems like it's such a basic, stupid thing, but it's just so fun to read. And then also, what I didn't know, and I don't think a lot of people know, is that the ending of this book is completely different from the ending of Twilight. And it was so wild. I was actually like shocked and gasping out loud as I was reading. Like, and once I finished the book, I had to put it down. And I swear I just sat there staring into space for like 15 minutes, like processing what happened, because it was just so fun. And if you're a fan of the Twilight books, like you must read this. I know a lot of people just skip this one, but I do think it is worth a read. I honestly do think as well that it is better written than Twilight. It isn't exactly copy and pasted with the name switch. She does like rewrite things and add things in and spruces things up, and I just think it is so fun, and I just loved it so much. So that's my little Twilight rant over, but I just, obviously if you're not a Twilight fan, I would not say this is going to make you a Twilight fan, but I just think it's really fun, and as a male reader especially, like I just loved it. In second place, I have Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, who is a Scottish author, and this is a contemporary book where you are following Eleanor, who is a woman with very low social skills, definitely a lot of mental health issues, definitely depression, and we are with her just as she navigates life, trying to make herself go out more and fall in love and make new friends. And this book is so sad in parts, but then also so hilarious, because Eleanor has such bad social skills. You're definitely laughing like with her, like you're not meant to be laughing at her, but the way that she says things and the way that she interprets these situations and puts herself in these weird social situations is just so funny. I don't ever laugh out loud at books, but this book had me laughing out loud like way, like at least 10 times, I swear. And then also in the second half of the book, it gets much more serious and deals with her mental health issues in a much more serious manner, and I really appreciated that. I loved the way it was written. I thought it was so well done, and the friendship in this, it was so great. It makes you think that, I don't think this is really a spoiler, but I think it makes you think that it's going to maybe get romantic, but it doesn't. It just stays a really pure, good-hearted friendship, and I absolutely love that. I think that we don't see enough of that. I think a lot of the times these friendships between a man and a woman, like an adult story, would definitely always go towards being a romance, but in this they just stay as really good friends, and I absolutely loved it. And I just thought that the way that the humour was interconnected with like the serious topics was just so well done. It kept things lighthearted but also educational and eye-opening, and I just thought it was like the perfect blend of serious and funny. So I really recommend this book to everyone. I don't really think it needs trigger warnings, to be honest. It does deal with like mental health, but like I said, in a very light-hearted way for most of the time. So I just absolutely love this book, and I definitely will reread it. I think it was great. In first place, we have Giovannis Room by James Baldwin, who was a black bisexual author from New York City. And in this book, we follow David, who is an American man that goes to Paris, and there he enters a relationship with a man called Giovanni. David also has a girlfriend who is off exploring Europe on her own, and he kind of has to come to terms and think about what his life would be like if he decided to enter a relationship with Giovanni, or if he decides to stay with his girlfriend, and what it is like being bisexual as a man in that era. But then it's such a timeless story that I think applies today. The struggles and the complexities of David's mind is so sad and heartbreaking, and the way that he treats Giovanni at times is so heartbreaking as well, but also just very realistic, so raw and real. And I just absolutely loved all the themes in this and just the exploration of the topic. What I also really loved was James Baldwin's writing style. It is so poetic and beautiful, and just really takes you into the story, into the atmosphere of Paris, and also into the claustrophobia of Giovanni's room, which is where the two men spend a lot of their time. And I just loved everything about this book. I could talk about it forever, to be honest, but I'm not going to, because I've talked about it in so many videos recently. But I just recommend it to everyone. I think it is an amazing classic, and the themes are timeless, and the way that James Baldwin just writes about everything, like I've already said, is just so raw and so real and emotional. And the story does not have a happy ending, but I just absolutely loved everything about it, and I cannot recommend it enough. So that was my top 10 books of 2020. It was a very good year for reading for me. I think right now I have read 113 books, so narrowing that down was a little bit tough, but I just think all of the books on this list were, for the most part, beautifully written, or such captivating characters, or in the case of City of Glass and Twilight Reimagined, Life and Death, just so fun. Like, just such a fun reading experience, which I think a lot of people sometimes forget that reading is meant to be. I feel like a lot of the time we are so caught up in trying to read all these specific things that we forget that reading is just meant to be fun. So I felt like it was important to include those two books in it as well, because that's basically what they were, just really fun reads. So hopefully you found some recommendations from this video, and if you've read any of these books and have your own thoughts, definitely let me know. And if you're also doing a top 10 books of 2020 video, also let me know, and I will definitely add it to my watch later list. I have such a long watch later list right now, but I will get to it eventually. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, please subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.